right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee for our second briefing of the day. Sorry to our guests that we're running a little late. We had a really interesting but then lengthy hearing on housing affordability this morning. And so now we will turn to talk about the major transit systems in Maryland, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, or WMATA, which is physically based in Montgomery and Prince George's, but in Maryland, but serves a larger part of our state and obviously the region. And then the Maryland Transit Administration, which for purposes of this hearing is the local service provider in the Baltimore area, but obviously is involved in lots of other things around the state, including things like the Purple Line and Southern Maryland Rapid Transit and the local operating transit system funding. Both systems, I think, have a positive story to tell after some years of challenges with pandemic difficulties and budget difficulties. And so we're excited to hear from you. And so with that, we will start with WMATA. We have the board chair, Valerie Santos, and the general manager and CEO, Randy Clark. Chair Santos, thanks for being here.
Thank you. And good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chairman Boyce, and committee members. My name is Valerie Santos, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Board of Directors. Can you hear me? Am I loud enough? Yes? Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So just a few quick remarks, and then I'll turn it over to our general manager. 2024 marked many milestones at Metro, and on behalf of the Board of Directors, I want to thank all who have contributed to our success. We have, as some of you may be aware, experienced 45 consecutive months of ridership growth. In 2024, both rail and bus ridership grew roughly 12% relative to the prior year. Customer satisfaction has also been rising. Metro customers rated their satisfaction at 92% on Metro Rail and 83% on Metro Bus. Metro Rail is the fastest growing system among major U.S. cities, and Metro Bus is leading the nation in ridership recovery. While we are excited about our successes, we know there's much more work to do. WMATA remains a steadfast supporter of Maryland's transit initiatives. We have organized our team to coordinate construction support, for example, around Maryland's priorities, such as the Purple Line, to maximize efficiency. We are also cognizant of Baltimore's need to advance the Red Line forward after years of stagnation, and we're mindful of the financial commitment that may entail. One of our board's principal responsibilities is working with our general manager on Metro's annual budget. Balancing our current 2025 budget required shared sacrifice. Our customers accepted a minimum 12.5% fare increase, and Metro's workforce accepted a zero wage increase. Coupled with a hiring freeze and a reduction of contractor resourcing, these efforts have generated more than $500 million in savings. I do want to express a special thanks to Chairman Corman, Maryland Legislature, and the Moore-Miller administration for providing the funding and legislative changes needed to continue safe, frequent, and reliable service. At the same time, I want to reassure you that we are working diligently to contain costs. One of the more visible ways we are doing this is through our fare evasion reduction efforts. For those of you who ride Metro, you may have noticed the new higher fare gates at all of our rail stations, and we've ramped up our data-driven enforcement on bus. The MTPD is also more visible throughout our system to address fare evasion. These high-intensity target fare enforcement efforts have also led to increased public safety. While we are proud of our recent progress, we know that continuous improvement requires coordination and cooperation throughout our region. Last May, WMATA and the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, COG, our boards met in an unprecedented meeting coming together to launch DMV Moves, which is a regional task force focused on creating a shared vision across our region for the transit network and its funding. Achieving a world-class transit system for our national capital region will require long-term, sustainable, and dedicated funding, and we look forward to continued collaboration towards these goals in 2025 and the years to come. The progress we have made over the past year has been led by our general manager, Randy Clark, and his core team. Randy's dedication and their relentless work has provided the leadership that has driven these results. And I will now turn it over to Randy to provide more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and all delegates. Thank you again for having us here today. I'm going to reiterate a couple points that the chair made. Just want to really thank both the chair and all of our board members, two of which are from Maryland, for all of their leadership, support, and kind of just general overall fiduciary responsibility for Metro. It's not exactly a high-paid position. That's a joke for volunteering. And they do an incredible amount of work, a lot of time committed to this organization that really matters heavily for our region. So I want to thank them. I want to thank the governor and Secretary Wiedefeld in the newly released budget proposal. Obviously, that makes sure that the WMATA investment subsidy is covered through the regular formula, and we really appreciate that. And obviously, last year between the governor, the House, and the Senate, it was just a very collaborative effort, rebaselining some of this long-term legacy pieces of Metro. Lastly, I just want to thank Chair Corman. He's been just a steadfast leader on Metro topics, and his bill that he introduced with Senator Augustine is really trying to help solve this long-standing capital issue. Many people put a lot of work into the capital funding in 2018. Unfortunately, it was not indexed at that time. And obviously, with just a very significant rate of inflation, we've lost a lot of purchasing power from that. So it'd be kind of like having Social Security not being indexed, and obviously the value goes down pretty rapidly over time. So I just want to appreciate that leadership. Okay, we're going to highlight a few things here. Obviously, we want to make time for my colleague and peer, Holly Arnold, up at the MTA as well, and the great work that she's doing there. So a few things we're going to highlight here, and obviously the deck, there's some more information there. We welcome any chance with you or your staff that need more information. We can interact with you during session for that. This is just general transit essential to our region slide that we use. It's kind of really the value of Metro in so many ways. A couple that I want to highlight, if you look at where Metro goes in our region, only about 3% of our property is within a half a mile of Metro, but that 3% makes up about 30% of the entire tax base of the region. So over $330 billion of property tax value near Metro. Being on transit is 20 times safer, that's statistically proven, than being in a car. So it brings significant safety value to both the people that use transit and the other people that are using other types of vehicles on the road. And the other one I think is worth highlighting, especially I really appreciate Governor Moore's highlighting the relentless focus in Maryland to continue to drive the economy, is we have about 250,000 jobs that are accessible within an hour on transit inside of the region. So again, if you want to get people to work, you have to obviously have a good transportation network to get them there. Couple Metro, just facts and figures for us. This is really broken down. We have a very unique system. We're a 3-state plus federal government system. We're the only one like it in the country. Very complex. We have a $5 billion budget overall, almost equal operating capital. We are the 2nd largest rail system in the country and the 6th largest bus system in the country. And obviously have a very significant Metro Access system. So Metro Access is a service, especially for individuals that may have a disability, both permanently or short-term, getting them to, even during this winter weather, a good example, getting people to life-saving dialysis or cancer treatments. Metro Access does that work as well. So that's just a little bit of the overview of the Metro facts and figures. A couple other numbers we want to share. The chair mentioned major reduction in fare evasion. We're really proud of the efforts we've done there. She also mentioned our customer satisfaction. That 92% is the highest we've ever had in the history of the organization. Incredibly proud. It's kind of like a Yelp review, and obviously the higher that Yelp review is, the better it is that we are performing at Metro. Not perfect ever, but really making sure that our customers feel valuable on the system. A couple other things I want to highlight. The 40% represents crime. Crime is down 40% last quarter over the previous year. Made a major impact to public safety on the system, and we're going to keep doing that. We're already seeing good trends coming in January as well. So we are seeing from our customers that they feel safe on the system, both visitors and local residents, and we're going to keep working on that. The last thing I want to highlight is the chair mentioned we are laser focused always on our fiscal responsibility. This year we received our 9th straight clean audit, and that is an incredibly important document by it's our independent OIG, who then brings in a certified firm that makes sure that all of our finances are done meeting all practices. So, and that is a very, very important thing for us to make sure that we are doing everything correctly with the region's money. Okay, a couple other things I want to highlight. Metro, as I think the chair mentioned, we do have some good things to share about, and I think it's fair to say sometimes organizations go through some tough patches. Metro certainly had moments where safety was a major concern. You probably remember some of those things like derailments or fires, things like that nature. A lot of that is just really, it's based on your infrastructure, having great infrastructure and that predictable funding around infrastructure, and having the rules in place to make that work well. So we are undeniably, in my opinion, the safest rail system in the United States. There's a thing called the National Transit Database that measures from the Federal Transit Administration all the statistics on rail systems. We are the industry leader on all the major significant safety metrics around the country. And this is something we are incredibly proud of. At the end of the day, I'm the general manager. It's my responsibility to run the system safely. And we have 13,000 teammates that all we do every day is to make sure everyone that comes to work gets home and everyone that uses our system gets home. You can see some of these statistics. I won't go through individual ones, but you can see that we are an industry leader. And again, this is federal data compiled across the country. A couple things that are Maryland specific I'll get into here. Again, we'll go through all of them, but a couple highlights. Maryland residents make up about 31% of all of our Metro Rail trips on the system, and about 34% of all the bus trips on the system. On the Metro Access side, it's just under 5,000 trips a day that are Maryland residents. So some other facts and figures are just percentages of people in Maryland that go to other parts of the region or within Maryland. But basically, give or take, a third of our activity is Maryland residents transacting on our system. Now, where those trips come, this is this kind of heat map or our plot map here really shows you where the origination of a lot of our trips. On the left is Metro Rail, on the right is Metro Bus. The bus side you'll see is more localized into our service area, so a very significant amount of Montgomery County and Prince George's County. Some that are outside that, but a lot in those two. If you look on the left side, though, on the Metro Rail side, yes, there's a lot of Montgomery County and Prince George's County, but you'll see that we have residents all over Maryland that then access the Metro system. So that could be a park and ride. It could be a bus on one of the systems Holly helps fund and support getting into our system. They could be using Amtrak, MARC. There's a variety of ways. But this shows you we are a larger Maryland asset than just two counties inside of Maryland. Now, when it comes to employees, we have a very significant, we're one of the larger employers actually in Maryland. We have 13,000 employees. Over 9,000 of those employees actually live in Maryland. And you'll see on this chart we put together, again, a lot of people think, oh, Metro is Prince George's County and Montgomery County. There's no question that is our service area, and we have a lot of employees that live there. But you'll see everything from, Baltimore City, we have 500 plus people that live in Baltimore City that work for Metro, as an example. Washington County, 76 people in Washington County work at Metro. We're spread out throughout Maryland, and those people are good paying jobs with good benefits that bring home to their region. A couple other things I want to highlight is a partnership, obviously continue to build the industrial capacity here in Maryland. I'm not sure if Holly will mention this, but it's really important for her organization as well. Many of you probably are aware, Hitachi new factory build in Hagerstown. This investment by Metro is helping, quite frankly, build this facility and bring these jobs here to Maryland. So with that, they also have a lot of sub-suppliers. So when you look at a train has hundreds of sub-components and suppliers. Kenora is based in Maryland, and they've actually expanded their manufacturing capacity in Westminster as well to support our fleet. We do a lot of work with them on our regular fleets, but especially on this expansion. So highly encourage someone to get up and see this facility if you haven't. It is really a good future investment in the state of Maryland's economy, and really part of the long-term state of good repair of both the WMATA system and the system in Baltimore. As the chair mentioned, we are incredibly focused on how to grow revenue and how to reduce expense. So really proud of the team's effort, and when I mean team, I mean the board and the staff working collaboratively with all of our partners. In the last just over 2 years, we've identified over $500 million of cost efficiencies, both on the operating and capital side. We very much are cognizant of, for every dollar we are looking for our 3 states to help solve long-term problems, we need to bring that to the table as well. The chair mentioned we increased fares last year for customers, 12.5%. We got that number back to the inflation adjusted what those fares should be. We froze wages last year. So in a highly competitive market, DC is one of the most competitive markets, our region in the country. And I want to give a lot of credit to our staff. All of our union staff and non-representative staff took a 0 last year. And that should not reflect everyone's actual work. It's not relative to the merit that they deserve, but that saved over $38 million, and then, of course, compounds over years. Want to just recognize the Better Bus Network redesign. I'll get into a little bit more detail, but MDOT, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and others, without their help, we would not be where we are today on that. And just kind of continuing on our fare evasion as well. We've had a lot of partner police agencies helping us across the system in Maryland as well. So what's coming in 2025 and beyond? A couple things I want to highlight. I mentioned quickly the Better Bus Network redesign. A nice way to describe that is where our buses go. And our network basically has not been upgraded in about 30, 40 years. So where there might have been a hospital, the hospital's not there, and it's apartment buildings. Or where there's apartment buildings, there's more apartment buildings, or vice versa, right? And the idea is how to align where our resources are being used to get as many people in the system and connect them to opportunity. So the board passed one in the fall, this big network redesign, largest one in the country, and it goes into effect June 29th. Here are a couple of the highlights. Maryland residents are going to have more access to jobs within 60 minutes of transit. 50,000 more Maryland residents are going to have access to a hospital within 30 minutes on an AM rush hour. 28,000 Maryland residents will be able to have access to college within a 30-minute transit during weekdays. So again, how to get people to health care, how to get people to education, how to get people to jobs. It's what we do all day, every day. A couple other facts that I think are really important here. 25,000 Marylanders will have better access on Saturday and 49,000 better on Sunday. To run transit well, we need all hour, all day of week frequent service. We can't ask people to be car-free Monday to Friday and then have no bus service for them on Saturday and Sunday. And then say, why can't you get a job and why can't you get the health care and why can't you look after your kids? Pretty obvious, right, when you say it that way? And to do that, though, it costs some money, but it also costs some resourcing on how we lay out our service, and there's trade-offs in that. And this network allows to have better those trade-offs to happen. So part of this, too, is 47,000 residents of Maryland in our equity focus. So this was a very equity-focused exercise in Maryland to make sure those that didn't have equal access to really good transportation have it, will have better service in rush hour to get to where they need to go. Lastly is, pretty close to lastly, is I want two more things I'll highlight is rail service optimization. So the question for us is how do you get the biggest bang for our buck of every dollar we spend at Metro? So when you're looking at a big transit system, especially like ours, it's a high fixed cost, low variable cost system. So all of those tracks we need to inspect. All of our elevators, escalators have to run. We have to have a control center. We have to do power inspections and signal inspections, and all that stuff has to be maintained. So for every other trip we run, costs very little amount of money. So if we're going to run 8 trips on say the Orange Line, running 10 is, I don't want to say it's a rounding error because every dollar matters, but it's very small. The big cost is when you build this stuff and you got to keep it in a state of good repair to run safe service. So what we're trying now to do is optimize every rail car and every employee to get the most bang for the buck for getting more people on the system. We are starting to get fairly crowded. As the chair mentioned, we led the country in ridership growth last year. My trip this morning was pretty full. We're probably on the rail system due, if I had to guess, about 475,000 on rail today. We'll probably hit 900,000 on the system, which is a lot for January. So we're going to be back to the million probably by the spring. So things are really moving pretty well for us there. A couple things to highlight. On the red line, we're starting to get a lot of what we would call crush loads, so very little capacity to fit more people, and sometimes people have to wait on the platform for the next train. So we're going to, in the proposed budget, is more capacity for red. Same thing is happening on our corridor between McLean, especially East Falls Church and Roslyn, where multiple lines merge there. So the idea is to have a little bit more service there. Now, on the Maryland specific side, red line does, of course, hit Maryland on those two ends. One of the goals is to get the yellow line back to Greenbelt So it wasn't there, then it was there. We had to take it away because we didn't have enough rail cars and we didn't have enough funding. We now figure through automatic train operation and optimization to get more service for less money. And the goal is to get every other train back to Greenbelt. Now, this is very important because it obviously connects people to a lot of jobs and school in both directions. So it's something that we're in the proposed budget. The other thing is you might notice on the end of the line, right now we run twice as many trains to Largo than we do New Carrollton, and we believe if we split those trains, we'll be able to provide Prince George's County a much better overall service on two corridors that are both have some economic growth going at the same time. That gets into the last part I really want to talk about, which is this Maryland development that we are doing with our partners, both on the state level and our real estate partner level, including Amazon has been a big component of our equity housing program. So I won't go through all of it. Again, these slides are really for you to have a little deeper dive, but the two I want to highlight are recently completed in '24. Pretty big development at College Park, right at our system, also at Grosvenor and at New Carrollton. So when you put all that together, it's about 1,000 units of apartments in 2024 that came on board. And now these are apartments someone doesn't have to have 2 cars or 0 cars, and they can live their life, right? And that's a big deal. In '25, you'll see another development at New Carrollton. If you haven't been to New Carrollton in a while, it is worth visiting. The amount of development that's happening there, plus there was a grant that was issued by the previous administration to redo the train hall with Prince George's County, Amtrak, Mark, and us. It's going to be quite a development there. North Bethesda, we have a development program happening there, and also West Hyattsville. And then you'll see at the bottom, lots of other opportunities that we are looking forward to. Part of this is just between capital costs and interest rates after COVID. I think a lot of developers are just kind of flushing out the market a little bit, but we are all in on partnerships to get more development around our stations. And these are just some pictures of some of the ones that are happening at Grosvenor, New Carrollton, and College Park. And I won't bother going through this. The chair mentioned this, but this is this DMV Move initiative. Really appreciate, again, Chair Corman, your activity on this, and this is a chance for us all as a region to come together and say what we really want it to be. And this, again, highlights where we're investing those dollars and all of the types of components of Metro that drive a great system and then fuel our regional economy. So with that, Chair Corman, again, thanks for the opportunity for the chair and I to be here. Look forward to any questions you have as we go through the program.
Great, thank you. Before we do questions, we will turn to Holly Arnold, the Administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration, for her presentation.
All right, we're going to pass the keyboard here, and I might need some help getting the presentation up. So while that happens, I just want to, thanks to Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee for having me today. And you may hear me repeating some of the things that Randy said. We have similar challenges, similar agencies, in a somewhat similar operating environment. We're at a little bit of a different stage, I think, at MTA than at WMATA. We're really focused on kind of reinvesting in our system, rebuilding our system, getting our system back on track to where it needs to be. Our focus over the past few years has really been on hiring, making sure we have enough operators to run the service that we say we're going to, as well as building up capacity so that we can deliver on our capital budget and ensuring that we can have a successful system by being able to, again, deliver and serve our riders well. I also want to, thank Governor Moore, Secretary Wiedefeld for their support and their leadership on transit, to the General Assembly for their support. I get calls and emails from you guys frequently, and I do appreciate your support and advocacy. 2024 was a really positive year for MTA. We have good momentum going into 2025. Coming in, we have ridership is up, our ridership satisfaction is improving, our service delivery is improving. Our hiring time, I do want to kind of really shout out the team on that. We have decreased the amount of time it takes to hire by 40%, and we are now fully staffed on operators for the first time in a really long time, which means that we can improve our service reliability and provide the service that we say we're going to. So diving in and kind of MTA at a glance. So we're also unique. We have 6 transit modes, which is kind of unique in the transit industry to have as many as we have. So in the Baltimore region, we have core bus, light rail, metro, and our mobility paratransit system. Statewide, we have our MARC commuter rail and our commuter bus system that provides service into DC and Baltimore from some of the surrounding counties. And we also do provide technical support and assistance, financial assistance to the locally operated systems throughout the state. So our purview really is kind of looking at the entire state and how do we provide the best transit possible to them. By ridership, we're 13th largest in the U.S. We have about 3,400 employees. About 80% of those are union represented employees, which are really our frontline folks who are focused on providing the service, turning wrenches, making sure that everything gets out there every single day. We own and are responsible for maintaining about $14 billion worth of capital assets. And I think that really ties into, our responsibility. Like, we have invested in the system, and our focus right now is maintaining what we've built. That hasn't always happened. We have inherited a system that has some disinvestment, and so we're focusing on changing that trajectory and ensuring that the system will be here to service years into the future. Our operating budget for FY25 was about $1.2 billion, and our capital budget 5.7 for this current CTP. And there's some details down below on the different modes. And I also want to stress that we are in the planning process for the Red Line in Baltimore, a light rail line throughout Baltimore City and Baltimore County. And we are currently building the Purple Line in the DC region through Montgomery and Prince George's counties. I believe the report that you just got today says that it's about 73% complete. And so we're continuing to advance that project. On the ridership side, we've continued to see increases in ridership, over 68 million rides in 2024, year-over-year growth in all of our modes, including post-pandemic highs. Every single day we serve over 150 commuters, 30,000 students, Baltimore City students, rely on our transit service, and then thousands and more rely on the system for other essential services such as groceries, healthcare, getting people around every single day. Our ridership, my bus most days is pretty crowded. I see a lot of students on the bus. We've got a lot of people who are out there who are continuing to ride, and we're seeing that growth continue. We're also an economic driver for the state. I think a lot of times in the MDOT world, people think of the airport and the port as the economic drivers for the region and for the state, but transit is as well. There's going to be a report that comes out tomorrow from the Greater Washington Partnership looking at what is the economic impact of MTA, and it shows that we are a significant driver for the Maryland economy. Over 80% of our operating expenditures support economic activity within the state, and over 75% of our capital expenditures. So the money that we are spending really is being invested back in Maryland. It's a $2.7 billion in total economic output for Maryland, including $1.7 billion in value added, over $900 million in labor income, and roughly 10,000 jobs throughout the state are supported because of the state's investments in MTA. Beyond that, we do support a wide range of industries throughout the state. Randy stole my thunder. I was also going to highlight Hitachi and Knorr because they are huge for us as well, right? Hitachi has this beautiful plant in Hagerstown, continuing to hire. It's very impressive, so I encourage folks to go out and check it out. Knorr Brake is another one in Westminster up in Carroll County where they provide brakes for all of our rail modes. And so again, a huge amount of investment that goes not just in the Baltimore region directly, but really throughout the state and supporting businesses throughout the state. There are businesses in every county in Maryland who support MTA and support and ensure that we're able to have the supplies that we need, have the materials that we need to provide service each and every day. 9 out of 10 trips on public transit directly impact the local economy, and that's supported by the origin and destination survey we recently did and the American Public Transportation Association research. People are using transit to either go somewhere to spend money or make money, and we're seeing that consistently, and they're using it for all types of trips as they're doing that. We're also seeing, I think Randy mentioned this as well, public transit playing an important role in business selection and workforce access. We have some really great success stories as we've worked with Trade Point Atlantic to ensure that we have more and more bus routes to ensure that folks are able to get out to the jobs there. If you go out even at a shift changes at 3 in the morning, they are very heavily used bus routes and bus stops. Home Chef is another one. They reached out early and said, hey, we're coming, we're building, we need our access. We changed a bus route, and we've seen a lot of success in terms of ridership there. McCormick Spice, again, one we may not think about a lot, but up in Hunt Valley relies on our light rail being there so that their employees can get there. So if you get at shift change time, you'll see a lot of folks getting off and going to McCormick. And hospitals is another one. We worked really closely with hospitals during the pandemic as they discovered that their workers rely on transit to get there. And so we have really fantastic and great partnerships with those to ensure that we can continue to make sure they have that access. I always like to shout out the cost of owning a car as well. Owning a car in Maryland is expensive. This is data from, I think, insurance.com. But by not having to own a car, owning one less car, we're able to save folks, $21,000 per year. 30% of the Baltimore region does not own or have access to a car, and so we're able to provide that critical service so that they're able to get where they need to go. And I won't go into some of the other considerations, but in terms of, impacts on public health, emissions, and our climate goals, equity, traffic congestion, transit is playing a key role in all of those. This is not a budget hearing, so I'm not going to dive too much in the budget, but I did just kind of want to let you know what is in it and what is driving towards. As we're looking at our success, right, so it's kind of a three-pronged approach, right? So we're maintaining what was built, we're investing wisely so that we can drive the economy and make sure we're maintaining safety, and then finally serving our riders well. So this operating budget, this budget proposal that Governor Moore has put out is designed to do exactly that, maintain what we have and invest wisely. So our operating budget for FY26, it's proposed to be $1.3 billion. It is service. It is labor and contracted services, and then another 10% for the locally operated system. 90% of our budget is going to ensure that our riders can get where they need to go and that people can have access to really everything they want to do in life. On the capital side, again, kind of a breakdown here, but more than 70% of our budget is focused on maintaining what was built and improving our system so that we can better serve our riders. In Baltimore, our metro system is 40 years old. We're in the process of replacing the rail cars. They are coming in now and are going to start going into service this summer. So that's a key investment that has been made into getting that system back on track and back where it needs to go. On the light rail side, our vehicles and our system is 30 years old. There's been disinvestment for a number of years. This budget proposal does have that kind of key investment to modernize us and get us back on track toward providing the system that the region needs and deserves. And across the board here, you can see investments through all of the different modes that we're continuing to make. Our money comes from, on the operating side, primarily from the Transportation Trust Fund, with some federal dollars and then fair revenue. On the capital side, our budget is 42% federal, with the rest being made up of state and other funds, which are kind of what other people contribute to some of the projects that we're doing. The other one I did want to stress is that we are and have been working on kind of restoring our foundation and building a pipeline so that we can deliver on projects. It takes time, it takes resources, and as good stewards, we've really been focused on that. So we've been focused on asset management. We now know what we own, we know what condition it's in. We have a really robust prioritization process for our state of good repair projects so that we're able to prioritize and ensure that our investments are going to the most critical needs, the most safety critical needs, and going as far as they possibly can. We've established a program management oversight office at our agency so that they can look at our rail modes in particular and bundle projects better, think about how we're going to do things, try and impact the rider as least as possible. So maybe we do a quick shutdown for a weekend so that we can go in, get everything done versus having multiple weeks of single tracking. But this takes time. This is, I established this in 2021 and we're now seeing the fruits of that labor. And so I think we have a really fantastic team that is ready to deliver. So you can see here in the budget, for the first time in FY24, we expended over 80% of that capital budget for the first time in a long time. And that was our highest year-over-year increase, both in terms of percentage and in terms of dollars. We spent over $300 million in FY24. Our team is primed and ready with additional investment to be able to deliver and ensure that the riders have what they need to get where they're going. And then finally, in conclusion, transit is a crucial investment. We provide that critical link to jobs, to healthcare, so much more throughout the state, throughout the region. And our team is ready to build on that momentum and to continue to deliver for the region. So I will stop there and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you both mentioned Hitachi. I want to make sure Delegate Baker remembers the time that him and Delegate Weigel and I just sort of broke in to see that on a weekend. So maybe we can come back for a more formal tour at some point. And I don't know, maybe some of those Purple Line police need to be lent out to Hitachi because we had no problem just walking in. So first question is Delegate Siliverti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for your presentation. And I refer you to page 4 of one of the charts here. It indicates that you've got a 40% reduction in crime. That's very impressive. What did you do, the royal you here, what did you do to really have that reduction?
Yeah, well, thank you, Delegate, and thank you for mentioning that statistic. Definitely the royal we, for sure. I want to give a lot of credit to our police chief, Mike Gonzalo, who's doing a great job, and our COO. So a couple factors. One would be our new fare gates made a significant difference. That really helped making sure that we're doing point of entry policing. We also got the law changed in DC. That allowed us to do ID checks differently related to fare. And so when that wasn't working, we didn't have the ability to run a background on someone or a warrant check on someone. We've taken a lot of people off the system with fugitive for justice, weapons, out on warrants, things of that nature through the fare enforcement process. We also brought in a lot of special police that now ride the trains and walk platforms. We have I think we're fully authorized for about 485 police at Metro. There isn't a police department in the United States that is full. I don't think in a lot of years. We're finally gaining that back. We formed our own police academy with certification this year. We were doing all of that in Northern Virginia. That's helped. We streamlined some training, getting officers out on the street easier. We also enhanced our camera network pretty significantly. We have over 30,000 cameras at the Metro system. And we brought in some new technology to help continually drive that performance. So the last part is we brought in what we call a community intervention team. So we have about 10 crisis intervention social workers that work for us, and they go out and really try to help individuals that may be experiencing homelessness or having mental illness on the system get to support they need. So we kind of look at it as compassion, cops, and cameras on that 3 pillars, and it's really worked out really well. So basically, we're trying to get people where they need to go. If you need some help, we'll try to get you help. But we're not going to tolerate bad behavior in the system. This is a transit system, and our job is to get people safely around. So a lot of people leaned heavily to get this number down. We're going to keep working at it, obviously.
One other question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I had it here. The 82% reduction in fare evasion.
Yes, sir.
How do you stop a guy or gal from walking onto that bus and walking right by the driver?
Yeah, no question. So this is on the rail side, the 82%. So again, our fare gates and our new law really has helped very significantly on that way. And again, our police presence. Now we've ramped up on the bus side pretty significantly. So, Holly, I assume probably has somewhat similar circumstances around the country. So what happened is, there was a decent amount of people paid for bus service before COVID. And then we opened the back doors and told everyone, get away from each other to not spread a deadly disease, right? And in certain markets, certain cities around the country, those protocols lasted longer than other places. So when I was in Austin, as a good example, I was the CEO down there, we kind of changed that policy maybe, quite frankly, pretty soon after vaccines came out, and then try to get back to norm. In this market, that has lasted a lot of years. And as you know, the longer something goes, it's harder to kind of put the genie back in the bottle, if you will. But we are working very hard at that. Our number one job is to make sure we're trying to collect, but never in a way that would endanger our employees. So our society, assaults have gone up, obviously, around the country, people's tempers, patience. Hopefully, as time goes on, we'll get that a little bit better. But we're not going to have our frontline bus operators get assaulted over a couple dollars. With that said, we have officers out there. We have new fare boxes on all of our buses. We can measure that data, and we've been going at the most the locations and bus stops and bus routes that have the highest level of fare evasion. And so we're watching this every day. I don't have any conclusive data yet. We're hoping probably by the end of February, we're going to have enough data consistency to get something out, but we're cautiously optimistic we're seeing movement on fare compliance on the bus side. But that's going to take a while to go.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark, can you just share, you always put this better than me, but your view on fare evasion? Not everyone who evades the fare is committing a more serious crime, but everyone committing more serious crime is evading the fare, basically? Is that you say it much better.
I think you said it very well, Mr. Chair. That basically our statistics prove out that, listen, not everyone that is evading a fare is going to commit other crimes, right? But almost universally, if you commit a serious crime on a transit system, you are fare evading. Not many people tap and then go assault or rob someone, generally speaking. But once in a while, we'll get someone that does that. But generally speaking, and so our point of entry policing kind of making sure that the basics are looked after really matters in the overall safety of the whole system.
And would you mind just also briefly talking about the Metro Lift program to make clear how we're helping people who actually can't afford to pay to get on the system?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chair. And sorry, I missed that in the larger presentation. So we formed, and I really give the board a lot of credit for this, we formed what's called Metro Lift. Anyone in our entire service areas for the 3 states, if you are eligible for SNAP, you automatically get registered into Metro Lift, which gives you 50% discount on fare. So again, we are trying to give a hand up for people that really need it in our society. But I think it's fair to say, if you're walking through a fare gate, wearing a suit like me, we can go, hey, you got to pay your fair share in society here for this thing to function correctly. And the number one group we hear from is actually other customers upset that people won't pay their fare. So I appreciate bringing that up, Mr. Chair. It's really a full, comprehensive approach to kind of fare and security.
Great, thank you. Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Mr. Clark, Ms. Arnold, and the board chair for your great presentation. I'm going to nerd out just a little bit and just ask in advance for 3 questions. So for Mr. Clark and WMATA, really impressive results on ridership improvement and lots of good things. You mentioned that you referred to the Hitachi manufacturing initiative and the Kenora Brake initiative. Amazing, wonderful for those regions. I'm wondering if you have any data on the number of workers who are employed in those rail material manufacturing jobs.
We do. I don't know what's on this slide, Charlie. I think you.
Did I miss that? It doesn't matter. It's worth repeating because I think it's interesting, exciting. Yeah. No, it just talks about there's the only number I see there is the Metro 8000 and the Metro 7000 series.
Yeah, I just checked with Charlie Scott. I think everyone knows Charlie. So I think it's 400 for Hitachi. You might have a different number, Holly, and about 200 at Kenora is generally the numbers that we have.
And those are local workers in Hagerstown and Westminster, I'm assuming. In that region, that general area.
That's my understanding of those numbers, yes, ma'am.
So that's really amazing. 600 workers in Maryland working on transit-related manufacturing. You also, Mr. Clark, referred to, you referred to housing development, residential housing development at some, or in the area of some metro stations. College Park, Grosvenor, New Carrollton, some, I think added up to about 1,000 housing units that have been completed, I think, if I remember correctly, in 2024.
Yes, slide 14. In 2024, we had, it looks like between the 3 is just over 1,000 units.
So that's potentially 1,000 new residents or more. And I wondered what sort of transit-oriented development initiative supports financing in incentives do you have in place that make those investments possible?
Yeah, so we have a strategic real estate program at Metro, and so a lot of these locations might be where, maybe a good example would be a station that is kind of surrounded by surface parking, kind of the traditional park and ride model. A lot of our places maybe have more parking than they actually need, maybe have always had more parking. And as people realize there's a big nexus between land use and transportation and then overall affordability. So in some of these arrangements, sometimes they're a little different. Sometimes it's a developer and we might have a local government, say a Prince George's County or Montgomery County, put in investment or tax financing, and then there's a partnership to develop a property. We have a library that we're doing with DC government at the moment on a piece of property. So they're all a little different, but the general idea is how do we use the real estate that is around our station to get the maximized utility for, quite frankly, community good. And that's housing and transportation working together. So part of it is how do we reduce the cost to do the replacement infrastructure? So we might take a big surface lot and build a smaller garage, because we still need obviously some parking and we still need transit facilities. Maybe it's the busway is shaped differently this time than it used to be. We work with our partners on how many bus bays we may need, but the idea is just how to facilitate it. Obviously, it's a very challenging time in the real estate market, getting a little bit better. The last couple of years have been pretty tough, but we are where people want to be, and I think you'll see on the map, there's a lot of places that we are working with partners on, and when they pencil out, that's when they kind of move from concept or planning into development.
Thank you. A last question for you, Mr. Clark, for now.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So are you, in your experience, have you observed or dealt with any local pushback on residential development near transit stops? Any NIMBYism interfering with progress?
Yeah, well, so I've been around this transit land use stuff for, at this point, over 2 decades, and I've had the opportunity to run 2 transit systems. I served on a planning board in Massachusetts for 7 or 8 years. Been yelled at many a times in a planning board meeting. So there is no question that a lot of emotions are in American land use planning. Generally, ours are pretty good because, you know, if it's a surface parking lot, most people don't see that as a value generally. It's also bad for the environment, for water runoff and water management and whatnot. It helps the tax base. We've obviously had pocketed places. I think it's fair to say the one in Tacoma had a robust community conversation about the height and whatnot around that. But, you know, I think it's our job to work with our partners and just talk about the value of not just the word density, but bringing services to people and bringing a more walkable, safe, kind of healthier community. And that's what we're just kind of focused on.
Okay, that's a very uplifting answer, but
Okay.
I'll ask you offline.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Ms. Arnold, thank you for your great presentation, as always, with your indulgence, Mr. Chair. I just love to hear a bit more from MTA. So, Ms. Arnold, one of the best parts of your presentation was when you said that MTA is now fully staffed with operators for the first time. That's amazing, and I really want to commend you. I know you've made that a priority. It's a sign that there's opportunity in MTA for employment and professional growth, and that people want to be there. It's wonderful. And that leads to my question for you, which is about really nailing down the economic benefits of transit. Mr. Clark and yourself have both included some of that data, but for MTA, I think it can be a harder sell than it can be down in the DC suburbs. So jobs, you mentioned that there are, I think, 10,000 Marylanders employed by MTA. 10,000 jobs in Maryland. And some of those are operators. Can you tell us a little bit more, if you have the data, about the economic, what's the word I'm looking for? The return on investment of that many employees?
Yeah, I mean, so, and again, I would encourage, hopefully everyone got the invite to the event tomorrow morning the Greater Washington Partnership is doing on the impact of MTA. So they have an entire report that they've done that's really, really fantastic, goes into some of the details. But overall, they, you know, identified $2.7 billion in economic impact from the investments in MTA, right? So, you know, we spent between operating capital last year about 1.5. So, you know, it's more than a 100% return on investment that you're getting from investing in MTA.
That's also incredible, and I think a really important part of the story when we talk about capital investment in transit. We're really talking about investing, not an expense, but an investment, and I really appreciate that. And then lastly, Administrator Arnold, you talked about so many things. Oh yeah, hospitals and your partnership with hospitals, your engagement, and how during COVID we learned that workers couldn't get to clinics and patients couldn't get to clinics because of issues with mobility and getting around. I've heard from some hospitals that they've begun to use their own budgets to pay for ride share in some cases. And I'm sure you know, and my colleagues know, we do spend state dollars subsidizing hospitals to deliver community benefits. And I just wonder if that's a good use of funds and what we could do to ensure that hospitals are not spending their own dollars buying transportation for workers and patients, and maybe reinvesting those dollars into our system, into our operating and capital. Could you talk a little bit about transportation and health access?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we hear quite a bit, is the importance of, again, not just workers, but for folks being able to get to appointments, return to appointments. We're working actually with Johns Hopkins now on a study that they're doing looking at basically, are people able to, they get to that initial appointment, they have whatever, but are they able to get to the follow-ups, and is what transit can do to help make sure that they have that access. So it's definitely something that we're continuing to look at. I will be the first to admit our reliability isn't what it should have been over the past few years. And I think that's one of the reasons that hospitals have kind of seen that. And so that's on us to go back and remind them of like, hey, look, our service has improved. We're continuing to provide that quality service that we need. We still need more investment, right? Like our system has been disinvested for a number of years. And so like our baseline needs to get up to maintaining what we have and getting us back on track to provide that good quality service. So it really is kind of all of those things that allow us to get there and do that. I would encourage, if you hear of anyone who has concerns, we've worked really closely with a number of hospitals to make adjustments to routes. Like GBMC, I think, is a good example where we've moved the route around as they're doing construction and ensuring that we're lining up with staff change times, shift change times. If there's big times when people have appointments, like we're really happy to work with any employers throughout the region to accommodate those.
Great. Just underscoring again, transportation as a social determinant of health. So I really appreciate your attention to that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here and for this great presentation. And so I want to, Administrator Arnold, I want to go back to the question of fare evasion. And I know Mr. Clark talked a lot about that. And obviously there's intentional fare evasion, but I think there also may be accidental fare evasion. I had an experience, I rode the Metro about a month ago, and I bought the fare on the app, but you can't scan it at the booth, so I have to show it to the person in the booth. Coming back, the person in the booth was on the phone, so the gate was open, and I just walked through. And I wonder how many people do that with the gates open and just walk through. Obviously, getting new, fare readers is an investment, and we have a lot of things we need to invest in, but I think it's an investment that will help the fiscal situation in the long run. So I'm just curious what the status of that is.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, Randy said it well, right? Like their new fare gates have made a difference in terms of fare evasion. We launched CharmPass, and I think CharmPass is a really fantastic app. I love that we have it. I wish we had installed validators when we did it, because it's fully a flash pass system. When you're in the Metro, and we don't have Wi-Fi, right? Like you run into a lot of issues associated with that. So we have a new fare collection director who I am thrilled to have on board, and is really diving in with us and having and taking a hard look at kind of where we are, where we're going, what our our path forward is for fare collection. And we're going to be leaning pretty hard on making sure that our fare attendants keep the gates closed and that they are there and talking with folks. So we're actually working on a campaign later this spring to be pushing that pretty hard, is making sure people know how to pay their fare, where they can do that, and that the gates are going to be closed in partnership with our police. Our Metro is actually going to be down this weekend as we're testing for the Hitachi rail cars, and so we have a number of training sessions for the station attendants with police, including de-escalation training, to help them as they're moving forward with that. We do need new fare gates. That is going to be part of our fare collection project that we're working towards. It's still a couple of years away before we're going to be able to roll those out, but we are investing now in seeing if we can, for fairly cheap, get the validators installed. Because I think that's a worthwhile investment. I fully agree with you there, so that we don't have to rely on the fast passes. On the bus side, I will say we are getting new fare boxes. They're going to be rolling out later this year. Those are also desperately needed, have been needed for a long time, and so we'll start to make a difference on the bus side later this year.
Great, thank you so much. And I just wanted to thank you, Administrator Arnold, for your commitment to transit and for everything you do, including your social media presence. Thank you.
You should also follow the WMATA GM on social media. They have a nice little back and forth, especially during regional sporting events. Delegate Jacobs.
Commanders.
His team won, mine didn't. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of you for presentations today, good presentations. But Holly, when you mentioned the percentage of completion of the Purple Line, I didn't quite catch it. Could you say that again?
73% is our current number. So we're continuing, again, plugging away every single day. They're working.
We were at 68 when we did our
Yes.
committee visit
You should.
This summer.
If you haven't been down there in a minute, you should go check it out. It is consistent construction. We're touching all the stations. Vehicles are starting to come in. And so it's slowly but surely kind of getting that project done.
All right, thank you.
Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming. Just a quick question for Mr. Clark. I really appreciated the slide about all the development projects that are happening around the metro. It's exciting stuff. My only question is, have you seen any of these projects imperiled or slowed down at all by the passage of rent stabilization in Montgomery County and Prince George's County?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I will say, I think part of the stuff that we've heard from all the developers, quite frankly, is Montgomery County's abatement program. It's been pretty big catalyst for some of this development activity in Montgomery County. So, we're trying to work very collaboratively with the county executive, the council, developers, the planning authority. So again, our job is just to partner with everybody and try to make stuff happen.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Actually, for those of us at the state government level, could you just tell us what the Montgomery County tax abatement program is?
Yeah, maybe I'll get Charlie to send that thing out with a little more detail, but it's basically an incentive program to get you to build more dense housing and development at metro stations, and then they can avoid taxes for a period of time in that development process. So, but my understanding, it's one of the better ones I've seen. I've been now in 4 states, and it's really trying to say there's space here near some of these suburban stations, and how do we turn them into, a little bit more urban parcels within these areas.
Great, thank you. Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to everyone for your presentations. For Administrator Arnold, TODs in the Baltimore area. Now, I know Metro Center is sort of the signature one. There's debate about Lutherville Station. I guess there was an announcement about Reisterstown Road development, which is great. Any others in the works that you can comment on?
So the MDOT Real Estate Office has really been focused on that over the past 2 years. Secretary Wiedefeld, has seen what has happened at WMATA and was really successful in kind of driving that down there, and is bringing that same approach to MTA. So a report was published last fall that looked at the Penn Line stations along the MARC line, and also one that's looking at the Baltimore region and what areas might be successful there. So right now, Reisterstown Plaza is the big focus. We have so much surface parking in that area. It's a area that would be really great and ripe for development. So that's the big focus at the moment, but we are going to continue to look at the stations that have those big surface parking lots that can accommodate a ton of activity in those areas.
Great, so maybe more to come in the
Hopefully
future.
more to come. We're leaning in hard. It is a fantastic asset. Like, our metro can't be beat. You cannot, getting from, Owings Mills to Johns Hopkins in less than 30 minutes. It's hard to beat. And so we want to make sure that we're making sure that people know that it exists, because a lot of people don't know that Subway exists in Baltimore, and that we have amenities around the stations to help ensure that people are continuing and able to use it.
Thank you.
Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all the presentations, but I really only had the opportunity in my area to interact with Ms. Arnold, and I'm so grateful for your office's willingness to help us with different issues. You've been terrific. I'm really responsive. I do have a question for you. It sounds like you've made enormous progress. I'm going to echo my colleague, Madam Subcommittee Chair's remarks. In filling positions. I know we've talked several times over the last few years about MTA mobility, and one of the big issues being that we just didn't have enough drivers to do what we needed to do to support people and where they needed to go. So does your statement that you filled all of the positions at this time apply to MTA mobility as well? Because I'm just going to be so excited if that's true.
So since those are contracted positions, I can't speak to it, but I will say that from what I've been hearing from the contractors, they're continuing to hire, but we are, fully staffed, are using all the vehicles on the mobility side. That is another one. I'm really proud of the work that the team has done on improving our mobility service. It was not where it needed to be. It still has room for improvement, but compared to where we were in, summer of 2021, we're over 95% on-time performance every single day as our ridership continues to grow. Our call time, our wait time as well, has one that, like, we moved staff around, worked really closely with the union to do that, and have decreased the wait time significantly because of the work that the team has put in. Paratransit in general is one that I think always needs improvement, and one that I would love to continue to partner with you on. But our baseline there is much better than what it's been in the past.
Thank you. And that is true. I'm hearing that on the ground as well. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, let's keep working.
Yeah.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on what my colleague just asked about. This is a question that I ask frequently. I truly wish that we had paratransit that went across out of the different regions of the state. That many of us who live in the DC area also go to hospitals and doctor's appointments in Anne Arundel or Baltimore City. We have excellent medical care, but some people can't get to it. And we have paratransit. I can get, in Prince George's County, on paratransit to Northern Virginia, but I can't get to Annapolis or Baltimore. And it just seems wrong to me. Is there any way that I could get you guys to collaborate and come up with a system where people can just get around all of Maryland?
Sure, I'd be happy to have those conversations and see if there's a way. I mean, there's legal parts and financial parts, but assuming we can solve the money and the legal parts, everything's a yes when you figure those two things out. But
Well, if
Holly,
you
happy
come
to
up with some
partner.
suggestions, I'll be happy to help you with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Administrator Arnold, just to follow up on Delegate Guyton's point, about a year and a half ago, I think the U.S. Attorney filed, I don't think it was an actual suit, I think maybe just a complaint or something against MTA related to mobility. Could you just update us on that? I don't recall hearing about it lately.
We actually got a letter Friday from the Department of Justice notifying us that they were dropping the complaint. They're lawyers, so they didn't say that we did everything right, but they acknowledged that they weren't going to move forward with a settlement agreement or a consent decree.
Cleaning out their drawer there at the last minute. Okay. And then for WMATA, Administrator Arnold had a capital budget performance slide showing their kind of history. If I did my quick math right, I think last year it was around 82% of their sort of capital funding that they spent. But before that, it was around 57%, and then in the 60s for a few years there. How does that compare to WMATA? Is that like sort of an industry-wide issue of not fully spending the money? I kind of remember this back when I first got here in the Stone Age, under who's now our secretary, was the general manager of WMATA at the time. Can you just remind me and tell me where you guys
Yeah,
are
I think that's capital execution. Right? So I actually have those. I have a big thing of numbers here. So on that one, a couple of years in a row, FY22 was the last. But before I think we were 79%. FY23 we hit 99.5%. Honestly, the highest I've ever. We had 3 or 4 very large projects, so that helped drive that. Last year in FY24, I'll explain a number and I'll explain a nuance of the uniqueness of WMATA in this. It was 87.6%, but in a good way, it was really 91%. And what I mean by that is we were having an assumption of preventive maintenance transfer. And since we didn't need to pull that money out and put in operating, which is a savings, it really is an effective rate of 91%. So that means for 2 years straight, we've been over 90% execution on our capital. One of the challenges we do have, I'll be honest, Chair Corman, is we've kind of slowed the program down. Again, thanks for your bill on this, is we don't really have predictability, give or take FY29 to FY30, on when our debt financing will run out from that dedicated capital money. And so we're really trying to look at every program differently. Is there some technology, some modernization that we could do on some of these projects to reduce cost? Also, with the board and this contemplating the capital program, are there ways we got to stretch our cash if we don't know that this funding is going to be there? So I think we as an organization can execute really well when we know that the funding's there, and so that predictability is really important.
Great, thank you. I do not see any more questions. So we've had 2 long back-to-back briefings, so thank you everybody for bearing with us, and I think we are adjourned until tomorrow. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, subcommittee announcements? Sorry, guys. Madam Vice. Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Natural Resources, because we are a little over, we will meet at 3:05 for an organizational meeting. We should be at the max 15 minutes.
Chair Holmes?
Housing and environmental, housing and real property is going to meet tomorrow. You should all have received an email relevant to tomorrow's meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Stein?
The Environment Subcommittee will be meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. virtually for the organization meeting.
No one else is frantically waving at me, so I believe